America is under threat. At least the America we've known over the past 2 centuries. The America of innovation and entrepreneurship and individual liberty. Sure, we can get new iPhones every year and the camera gets better. You know, sometime they're going to have 8 cameras on here. And the new models, they're more fun in some ways, but is that enough? Does that satisfy your desire for liberty? We're seeing individual liberty redefined as the ability to cross-dress and read stories to kids at libraries. But if you want to start a business, or raise your kids by your own values, or make personal medical choices other than for gender-bending surgery, you're seeing your liberties diminish. That's not just bad for you, it's bad for society and could be the end of America and terrible for the world. Did you know that as late as 1820, the world's per capita GDP was roughly the same as it had been 1,000 years before? The average annual economic growth rate prior to 1820 was about 1/20th of 1% for 1,000 years. But something happened amazingly in the world around 1820, and you guessed it. America became a hub of growth based on the notion of individual liberty. There's a paper that's published by NC University that explains how global prosperity emerged as the convergence of 4 factors. 1, the greater transfer of knowledge. They call it the encyclopedias, which is also the weakening of overprotective guilds. Prior to 1820, the labor unions, or the guilds, they would hold on to their knowledge and not share it so that they could protect their economic position. 2, the effective protection of property rights, just like we talked about in patents. 3, healthy competition between nations, so that inventors not welcome in one country could take their brilliance elsewhere, and a lot of them came to America. And 4, the development of financial instruments that dynamized innovation and risk-taking. That's investing. All 4 of those factors are based in individual liberty, and they were all adopted in America, and the world was blessed as a result. All 4 right now are under threat by collectivists who want to strengthen unions, deny private property, eliminate competition, and limit risk-taking. Doing this would take us back to medieval times, literally. Even Bono, the activist, lead singer from U2, you know Bono, he understands this. Here's a quote from a recent interview he did with the New York Times. He said, "I ended up as an activist in a very different place from where I started. I thought that if we just redistributed resources, then we could solve every problem. I now know that's not true." There's a funny moment when you realize that as an activist. The off-ramp out of extreme poverty is commerce, it's entrepreneurial capitalism. Here's what the National Review said about Bono's New York Times interview. They said, "Bono is unquestionably correct. In 1990, about 38% of the world's population lived on less than $2.15 per day, the international definition for extreme poverty. In 2019, only about 8% lived below that line. And yes, that's adjusted for inflation and the cost of living. What used to be a problem for over 1/3 of the world's people is now a problem for less than 1/10 of them." So what changed in 1990? That's just after the Berlin Wall fell, when individual liberty began its global ascent. We exported Americanism. Now, however, politicians, socialist governments, and the World Economic Forum have conspired to remove Americanism, to replace individual liberty and entrepreneurial capitalism with their own brand of collectivism. That's inherent in the Green New Deal. It's the basis for the Great Reset. And this was predicted by a Russian economist named Joseph Schumpeter nearly a century ago. Again, I'm going to quote from NC. Joseph Schumpeter, 1883 to 1950, was pessimistic about the future of capitalism. He believed that powerful incumbents, think conglomerates, would eventually dominate every sector. By stifling competition, they would kill innovation and growth softly. That's precisely what we see from democratic socialism. That's what we see from the World Economic Forum. They're attempting to replace individual liberty with state-endorsed, corporate-driven, globalist collectivism.